Beyond the Gates spoilers for Wednesday, October 22, 2025 tease that Jacob will have an unexpected reunion with his brother Isaiah, and rumors roll into town like a slow-motion storm, quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. The mention of Isaiah's name is like a small fuse under Jacob's chest, igniting a myriad of memories and fears that have until now been carefully controlled. Jacob has been treading on a narrow ridge. His relationship with Naomi is strained by the stress of an unplanned pregnancy, and every argument, every silence, every attempt at tenderness now seems fragile, like a thin thread that could snap if pulled wrong. When Jacob first sees Isaiah stepping off the bus and into the town square, the sight is almost cinematic: a taller silhouette, hair combed in a way that suggests effort, a casual smile that seems designed to put people at ease. The visual contrast with Jacob is immediate and unnerving. While Jacob is compact and cautious, calm in a way that suggests a man accustomed to restraining his reactions, Isaiah moves with a spacious, lithe way that suggests he is always expecting the world to unfold before him. That visual difference is not merely physical description. It is the shorthand for everything between them. Jacob's compactness is the sum of restraint, responsibility, and the kind of nervous precision learned by someone who plans for consequences. Isaiah's looseness is the language of charm, of improvisation, of trusting instinct over forecast. Family photographs will later betray the divergence: two boys side by side, same eyes, different stances. That small revelation, hat in two men of the same blood. Temperament can vary so much becomes the lodestar for how people in the town will read the brothers. When people say they're like night and day, they mean it. Jacob's worry isn't only about his marriage, it's about how his private failures, the fissures in his relationship with Naomi, might be amplified by an outsider who carries charisma like a weapon. He fears not only what Isaiah might do, but what Isaiah represents: temptation, a mirror that shows Jacob what he is not, and the possibility that Naomi, exhausted and emotionally raw from the pregnancy, might interpret Isaiah's presence as either a rescue or a wild card. Naomi's struggle is a slow erosion that the town misreads as moodiness at first, and then, with unfortunate inevitability, as a deepening despair. From the outset she did not want to be pregnant. The pregnancy is an event that has pressed against her agency and rent it. Where others see a child, Naomi sees the life that will define and limit her. She feels trapped by biology and by the social expectations sludge that clings to every woman in a small town. Mothers are lauded, but they are also assumed, judged, and defined. Jacob's attempts at consolation, soft conversations, practical plans, a frantic willingness to shoulder responsibilities are met with a glacial distance. Naomi does not respond to platitudes. She wants concrete assurances that this will not become the hinge upon which her life turns in a direction she didn't choose. The pressure cooks her mind into a corner where bitterness and fear become indistinguishable. Isaiah's arrival catalyzes this pressure into a new, treacherous geometry. He arrives without fanfare, carrying a duffel bag and that effortless smirk, telling Jacob he needed a place to stay, that he was passing through, and something about the town called him back. Whether this is literal or a carefully chosen line is one of the small puzzles the story delights in. Isaiah knows exactly what he's doing when he chooses to appear in Jacob's fragile life. Jacob's reaction is immediate and complicated, a mixture of obligation, resentment, and the slow recognition that not saying no will have consequences. The brothers tiptoe through the old rituals: awkward hugs, jokes about shared childhoods, references to family lore, but beneath the surface is the old pattern. Jacob, who took the sensible path, resents Isaiah's glamorous indifference. Isaiah, for his part, seems bewildered by Jacob's self-restraint, not quite understanding the weight his brother carries every morning like an extra coat. The narrative tension thickens when Isaiah eyes Eva. He carries himself like a man who understands the arithmetic of attraction and the short lifespan of intimacy in a town that worships novelty. The first time he speaks to her, it's casual, almost careless, an offhand compliment that puts a warm flush on Eva's cheeks and makes her laugh in a way she hasn't since the incident with Thomas. The past with Thomas hangs over Eva like a shameful weather pattern, a night of vulnerability that left her feeling exposed and mistrustful. Isaiah's approach is different, attentive but light, flirtation dipped in humor, a promise of drama without danger. It is precisely the sort of thing that will either help Eva splinter the hold Thomas had on her or, if misread, push her deeper into skepticism. Eva's internal dialogue becomes a battlefield. Part of her wants to test the idea of being desired again without the sting of earlier betrayal. Another part hears the town's gossip machine starting to hum, and the memory of shame returns with the blunt force of an old Bruce. This dance between Isaiah and Eva is not a mere subplot. It functions as a mirror to Jacob and Naomi's crumbling marriage. Where Jacob's anxieties are inward, Eva's flirtation with possibility is outward and immediate. The town, as towns do, reads the signals in exaggerated fonts. Flirtation becomes betrayal in rumor, and rumor hounds any couple that looks vulnerable. Jacob watches Isaiah's magnetism like a slow-motion car crash, unable to look away yet desperate to intervene. Isaiah senses Jacob's discomfort and does precisely the thing a man like him would. He presses the advantage, not cruelly but naturally, because his charm doubles as a lens into other people's needs. He believes, perhaps genuinely, that he can bring lightness to anyone's life. The danger is that some people are not seeking light but relief from the obligation of being lightened, which plays into Naomi's existential dread of motherhood. Isaiah's presence thus becomes a test not only of marital fidelity but of the couple's emotional architecture. Naomi's reactions to Isaiah are more volatile than Jacob could have predicted. To Naomi, Isaiah is not simply a man, he is a catalyst. His voice, casual and curving with a metropolitan lilt, suggests a life where choices are made lightly and consequences dissolve quickly. For Naomi, that life is both poison and cure. She is frightened by the idea that she might want what she can't have: freedom, the ability to choose without explanation, and the knowledge that another man could represent an escape terrifies her with an erotic and moral force. Her pregnancy narrows her patience. Family members come around with the best intentions, advice about prenatal vitamins, appeals to family responsibility, anecdotes about the joy of motherhood. They mean well, but every visit becomes a small assault. Naomi's refusal to reconcile with the pregnancy is not just about the child but about identity. The child is a future that declares, "You will be this," and she refuses the sentence. Jacob sits in the center of this storm, driven by love that borders on guilt. He loves Naomi, he always has, but his capacity to make her surrender the fear of the pregnancy is limited. He wants to be the man who can make the choice easier, who can present options that mitigate fear. He tries to be reasonable, offers to research adoption, to talk to counselors, even to consider moving to a different setting, but Naomi's inner refusal is stubborn and stubbornly non-negotiable. When he contemplates asking Isaiah to leave, Jacob is torn. There is a fraternal loyalty that roots itself in his spine. Family looks after family. But he also recognizes the emotional arithmetic. Two charismatic men in a tight domestic space and a woman in crisis is a recipe for disaster. He imagines the conversations that might erupt at midnight, the resentments that could be seeded by an offhand remark, the tiny betrayals that accumulate until a relationship is unglued. Isaiah's choice to stay is not announced as a provocation, it is presented as a favor, as a casual arrangement that leverages Jacob's sense of duty. He claims he needs a few days, a place to sleep while he gets back on his feet. Jacob, despite misgivings, agrees because refusing feels cruel and unnecessary. He rationalizes, Isaiah will bring laughter, he will take the edge off. Perhaps he can help Naomi with distractions. But this rationalization is an elaborate garment meant to cover the naked truth. Jacob is giving permission for an unknown variable to enter the closed system of his marriage. As soon as Isaiah crosses the threshold of the house, the rhythm changes. His footsteps fill spaces that Jacob had sealed, his laughter reconfigures the soundscape, and Naomi's silence stretches in new ways. What Jacob thought would be minor disturbances become structural weaknesses. Small rituals, coffee at dawn, the clatter of dishes turn into fraught events. loaded with subtext and accidental glances. The town itself becomes a secondary character in this unfolding drama. Neighbors who once chatted over fences now whisper about the new presence in the home. The hardware store owner notices Isaiah's tailored shoes and offers a compliment that is meant to be friendly but lands like a measured observation. The barista in the coffee shop remembers Isaiah's name and begins recommending people he should meet. A local teacher spots him and says something about city ways in a tone that is both admiring and wary. These small social ripples matter. In a place where everyone knows everyone, reputations are currency and protective shells. Jacob watches it accumulate, the subtle tilt of people's eyes when Isaiah walks by, the way Naomi stiffens when some neighbors linger. He worries that Isaiah's presence will not only complicate internal dynamics but also transform the external environment, reshaping how the couple is perceived and thereby altering the gravitational pull of their marriage. At night, the house itself feels different. Isaiah sleeps in the spare room, but the presence of another male in the house is a psychological appliance that consumes energy. It alters the comfort of the living room, the privacy of the shower. Jacob finds Naomi staring at the ceiling for hours, her hands on her abdomen like a pledge or a protest. He tries to talk in the early mornings, when the world is still soft and forgiving, but Naomi's answers are brief and sharp. He wonders what conversations she has had in the dark, what private scripts she has been rehearsing. He imagines her with Isaiah talking to him the way one confides in a stranger, the way one might confess secrets to someone who is not bound by the same history. That thought fractures him in ways that are both irrational and inevitable. He wants to believe in the sanctity of their private world, but the house holds too many doors now, and the keys have been given to someone else. As the days pass, Isaiah is careful about not being overtly predatory. His tactics are more insidious: attentive listening, the occasional favor, the kind of small kindnesses that seem designed to be memorable. He brings groceries one evening, a ridiculous selection of exotic fruits and a bottle of wine with a label that promises a story. He tells Naomi about a friend who left town and found new life elsewhere, the story told casually but with the precise intention of planting a seed. He asks about small things: Naomi's favorite song, her childhood fear, the book that made her cry, and remembers them. The town interprets these attentions in the simplest terms: flirtation is flirtation. Jacob, however, feels the slow acid of comparison. Isaiah's attentions feel available without the cost Jacob must bear to offer them. Jacob cannot offer the kind of lightness that comes so naturally to Isaiah. His gestures are heavy with calculation, with the knowledge of aftermath. Isaiah offers a different currency: immediacy. A currency Naomi has never really had the chance to spend. Conversations escalate to resentments that are long-awaited and devastatingly mundane. Jacob confronts Isaiah once, in the kitchen. He asks him to leave, to spare Naomi the additional complication. Isaiah's reply is not defensive, it is, rather, a small and honest question about Jacob's own desires. "Do you want me gone because you need to show me you're in control?" he asks. "Or because you're afraid of what I might reveal?" The implication is not about secrets long buried, but about the raw human fear of being inadequate. Jacob walks away from that confrontation feeling both right and humiliated. He recognizes the truth in Isaiah's question. His request for Isaiah to leave is as much about proving something to himself as it is about protecting Naomi. This internal admission is corrosive. It suggests that Jacob's actions are performative as much as they are protective, and that recognition shatters his sense of moral superiority. The friction reaches a fever pitch when Naomi, in a sudden and uncharacteristic burst, invites Isaiah to sit with her on the porch. They talk for hours under a sky littered with stars, and the town slumbers unaware of the precise configurations of the moment. Naomi is candid, more candid than she has ever been with Jacob, about fear, about the very real terror of losing herself in the identity of motherhood. Isaiah listens without judgment. His responses are not sermons, they are permutations of empathy, the kind of empathy that is hard to find in a world of obligations. Jacob, standing at the kitchen window, watches the figures on the porch and feels a nausea that has nothing to do with the pregnancy. He paces, fiddles with the lock on the back door, and rehearses speeches he will never deploy. He imagines 1,000 betrayals, some realistic, some fanciful, and all of them devastating. The scene on the porch is compact and intimate, and Jacob's absence is a puncture in its center. The moment is a brief, lethal beauty tableau that will be replayed in his mind for weeks to come. From here, the story can shift in multiple directions, secrets revealed, alliances formed, ruptures deepening. The presence of Isaiah in their home is not simply a narrative device, it is a test of character, an illumination that reveals the cracks and strengths within relationships. The household's emotional economy is recalibrated daily, minute by minute, and no action is without weight. Jacob's choices will either consolidate his marriage or fracture it irreparably. Naomi's decisions will shape who she becomes: mother, rebel, or something in between. Isaiah's motives, whether benevolent or self-serving, will catalyze change. But as night deepens and the town sleeps, the house remains an organism in motion, and the smallest movement, brush of a hand in passing, a smile shared across a kitchen island, a silence that lasts too long become the atoms of consequence. The scene closes on an unresolved breath, voices fade into the dark, and the reader is left on the precipice of a choice that each of the three characters must face, alone and together. The house wakes to a morning that feels slightly altered, like a room that has been rearranged while you slept. Jacob wakes before dawn, as he often does, and finds the coffee pot empty, though he thought he had filled it the night before. He walks into the living room to find Isaiah reading at the window, light falling across his face. The sight of him there is a small indignity, stable, calm, as if he has every right to be in that place. Jacob's internal friction is sharper than before. He chooses brevity in the morning exchange, careful to keep his tone light but firm. Isaiah's answer is an offhand joke about staying for a little longer, the emphasis on little making Jacob hear the threat in a new way. Jacob is not a man who makes threats easily, but in his chest an ember glows. He must act, not in grand gesture but in the slow, deliberate enforcement of boundaries. He asks himself whether returning to a life without Isaiah is possible now, or whether the presence has already changed the climate irreversibly. On the other side of the porch, Eva is alive with a new sense of possibility. Her encounter with Isaiah has cracked something open, but it is more complicated than a straight-line attraction. She recognizes the danger. Remembering Thomas' betrayal keeps her wary, but she also feels, for the first time in months, the sensation of choice. To her, Isaiah is not simply a man seeking to flirt. He is a possibility that her life can be something else. She experiments with the idea in small ways: longer eye contact, a lingering conversation about books she loves, a mention that she might take a class in a neighboring town. These gestures are not declarations, they are probes, delicate tests of how the world might shift if she were to step out of the orbit of past shame. The tension in Eva is about trust: how much she can trust herself to want what she wants without being consumed by regret. Meanwhile, the dynamics at home become a pressure cooker. Isaiah continues to work the edges of the household like a careful gardener, cutting away dead branches with a smile. He offers to fix the leaky sink, to teach Jacob a trick he's learned in a job he once had, to bring flowers that are not the usual town varieties but something from a different geography. His gestures are small rebellions against the town's expectations, they are also tactical, and Jacob sees his brother's hands moving with a purpose that unsettles him. A neighbor, Mrs. Dalloway, who keeps track of local comings and goings, drops by to deliver a casserole. She watches Isaiah with a kind of appraisal that says more than words could, and her eyes sketch possibilities onto the kitchen table. The town's gossip does not roar, it whispers, and whispers can be as lethal as shouts. Naomi, meanwhile, is increasingly isolated within her own mind. She attends prenatal appointments but leaves them feeling more alienated. The doctor speaks in clinical reassurances that sound like platitudes. Naomi hears only the contours: healthy, normal, expectant. These words do not reach the deeper ache inside her. She takes long walks in the evenings to clear her head and finds herself crossing paths with Isaiah more often than chance would predict. Each encounter is a conversation, a moment of clarity. Isaiah does not offer solutions, he offers company. In Naomi's mind, Company becomes a dangerous currency. She worries that dependence might be misread, that her yearning for a listener could be interpreted as a romantic opening. She tries to contain it, but the human desire for understanding is a force that does not respect the neat boundaries of marriage when those boundaries are already under strain. One afternoon, an incident sharpens the tension into something concrete. Eva receives a flirtatious message from Thomas, short, provocative, and designed to wedge open the old wound. She shows Jacob the message in a moment of panic, and Jacob's reaction is not the righteous anger Eva expects. Instead, he is deeply unsettled, because the message reminds him of his own inability to protect those he loves from the past. He shows Naomi the text, seeking solidarity, but Naomi's response is a cold blank. People will always try to reopen wounds, she says, but the words are hollow. What the message actually does is expose the fragility of the household's defenses. If past lovers can still reach across the years with a single notification, then the present seems less stable than it ever did. Jacob begins to see how easily small things can ripple into catastrophe. As the narrative arcs toward its midpoint, the characters are all acting from an interior urgency that makes them less predictable. Jacob must decide whether to demand Isaiah leave or to find another way to rebuild trust with Naomi. Naomi must decide whether she will allow the pregnancy to determine her or seize back agency over her future. Eva must decide whether to guard herself against Isaiah's charm or to explore the sliver of possibility he offers. Isaiah must decide whether to be a catalyst for healing or a force that accelerates destruction. Each decision carries moral complexity. There are no easy answers. The stakes are not merely relational but existential. Lives will be rearranged. Loyalties will be tested. The small town, with its wiring of gossip and county roads, will watch and, in watching, will change what it means to be seen. The scene tightens like a wound ready to split open. Jacob hears footsteps in the hall at midnight, the sound a metronome beating against his patience. He rises and finds Naomi awake, a light slanting across her face. She is not alone. Isaiah is there, talking softly, his hand on her arm like reassurance. Jacob's breath catches. The rest of the house folds into a hush. In that silence, years of history and decisions converge. The story pauses on this moment, the air electric and thick with the promise of either rupture or revelation. The reader is left holding the breath with Jacob and with the knowledge that the next move, whichever it is, will alter the course of every heart in that house.